going on, everybody? John Matrix here. Hope you're all doing well and having yourselves a wonderful day. Wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this, we're going to be jumping into another 40k video here by Pancreas No Work. We're going to be checking out Do or Don't Adeptus Custodes. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to Pancreas No Work's channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video of his, be sure to go to his channel, hit the like button, and hit that sub button on his channel if you haven't already. Makes a lot of great content for the 40k universe, for Warhammer Fantasy, and others. So check out his content. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, as I am doing right now with my YouTube members, we'd love to have you guys come in and join our conversations we have before, during, and after, and hang out and chill and just have a good time while we watch these videos. If if that sounds interesting to you, there's a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. So you can go there, check all that out, and see if it would have any interest for you if you want to take your sport to the next level. But regardless, I just appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out, watching the video here, taking the time of your day to do so. Hope you enjoy it, and yeah, hope you're having a great day. So without further ado, again, this is Do or Don't Pancreas No Work on Adeptus Custodes. Come on, there it is.
So like I mentioned in their Do or Don't, one of the great things about the Guard is how, despite being regular people in a setting of superhumans or super elves or super bugs and what have you, they still pull out victories regularly and make sure everyone knows you just got beat by a bunch of nobodies, which is something that makes them uniquely appealing. But at the same time, sometimes you want to be at the other end of that spectrum. Sometimes you want to be the super soldiers to end all super soldiers. Instead of being an endless swarm of humanity backed by enough basic equipment to drown the Sahara Desert in tanks, maybe you want to be part of a
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I had my choice, if I lived in the 40k universe and had a choice of what to be, I would take a Custodes, you know? I mean, granted, the life of a Custodes in general would probably be pretty boring, because you could literally be standing in one spot for like hundreds, if not thousands of years and literally doing nothing else. So there is that aspect of it, but you know, you're also like a one-man army that can destroy all kinds of stuff, and like literally you're only like second to the Primarchs or the Emperor, you know? So
a very finite group of people who are all so disgustingly overpowered they make Goku look like he needs to hit the gym more often. And between hitting 30k and approaching 40k subscribers, I figured it'd be fitting to talk about the fellows who embody 40k potentially more than anyone. Incredibly over-the-top supermen fighting in the name of a dead god and a nightmarish dictatorship, all the while wearing a tractor's worth of metal. Super soldiers that face the unrelenting horrors of the galaxy with no more than a shrug and an eye roll, because they're so far above it all it's like comparing Mount Everest to a sledding hill. So if you like being the best of the best of the best of the best, being part of a chosen few most people can't even dream of being a part of, and wearing armor so gaudy even the Elder would tell him to take it down a few notches, then look no further than the Adeptus Custodes.
Do or Don't Adeptus Custodes.
Oh,
I think this will probably be like, I still want to get some more Grey Knight units. Like I'm probably going to get a combat patrol box for the Grey Knights next and paint those up. I still need to paint my other guys, but I think maybe some Custodes might be my next thing that I get. And then maybe some Necrons after that.
and the Sisters of Silence, they're included too. You didn't think I'd forget about the Banana Girls in the Banana Boy video, did you? But first, a word from our sponsor.
All right. We're going to skip over the sponsor stuff, so if you want to check out and support his channel, check out his sponsor stuff, check out his Patreon, check out his membership deals, all that stuff.
The Adeptus Custodes are what happens when God decides that just because he's all-powerful doesn't mean he can skimp out in the bodyguard department. When the Emperor was conquering Terror to turn the home world into the throne world, he realized he would need some super soldiers to make sure the victory was a guarantee and not just a probability. So he made the Thunderers, and they were great at killing and awful at everything that wasn't killing. But he also made the Adeptus Custodes, and you know what? He nailed it with these guys. Literally zero flaws with the end product. Unfortunately, producing these glorious bananas is expensive.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Bezos would go bankrupt trying to make one of them expensive. So despite the fact that anything His Glowy Majesty threw them at was swiftly referred to in the past tense only, the Emperor had to make do with the replacements of the Thunderwar.
You would still think, though, with all the vast resources the Imperium has, they would find a way. I mean, I guess, who knows, right? The process of making Custode is literally, I think, only known to, like, less than a handful of people in the Imperium, right? So, who knows what it actually takes to make it, and, you know, and maybe it has something to do with the Emperor himself infusing some of his own power into them, or who knows? And so maybe it can't be done that much anymore without, the Emperor being alive. But I don't know. It just feels like with the vast resources the Imperium has now compared to what it had during the beginning times when the Emperor's first setting out, that it would be easier to make Custodes, or at least the availability of people and resources would be more abundant to make more Custodes, but what do I know?
The Space Marines instead, since there was really only enough resources to maintain 10,000 Custodes more or less. Fast forward through the Horus Heresy, and the Custodes go from bodyguarding the Emperor by standing around and looking cool to fighting a never-ending war against demons in the halfway point between reality and hell. Because once again, Magnus did something wrong. A bunch of them died, though probably with a KD ratio that would make a nuclear strike jealous, and then the Emperor bites it and has to get put on the Golden Throne. Guilliman and Rogel Dorn tell the Custodes to sit put in the Imperial Palace and guard the Emperor for all eternity, and the Custodes smile and nod and then immediately start performing covert ops stuff all around the galaxy because no one but the Emperor can tell them what to do. Fast forward 10,000 years once again, the Emperor still hasn't undied yet, but Guilliman has, and he gets rid of his stupid order. Finally, the Adeptus Custodes alongside their allies, the Sisters of Silence, can officially get back in the game. And more importantly, Games Workshop can put them in the store for you to buy. The Sisters of Silence, meanwhile, were also formed roughly around the time of the Custodes in order to combat any psychic threats the Imperium might encounter. They're all blanks, which means they have no soul, or they have a negative soul, which is different than having no soul somehow.
How do you have a negative soul? How does that work?
I don't understand it, but whatever, I guess. Either way, when they're around wizards, magic doesn't work, and when they kill a demon, that thing doesn't just get banished back to the warp. That dude is dead. And despite not really having any augmentation,
I guess that's what a negative soul is? I don't know. The concept of a negative soul does not make sense. It does not compute.
they keep up with the Custodes no problem. Of course, after the heresy ended, they also disappeared for 10,000 years to babysit spaceships full of untrained wizards, before Guilliman once again realized how stupid this was and brought them back into the fray alongside the Custodes. AKA Games Workshop realized those models would probably sell pretty well too. That backstory felt lengthier than usual, but either way, that's what you should—
Seems to be a theme where, like, things happen until Games Workshop is like, hey, we could make more money off of this if we do it this way.
know before going into the talons of the Emperor, so why go for these guys? Well, do you want to be the winner? Because the Custodes are going to win all the damn time. Like, half a dozen of them went against 10,000s of Tyranids and won without a single casualty. At one point, they went up against what was basically an infinite amount of demons by themselves and managed to hold the line long enough for the Emperor to shut the door in their faces. These guys are busted. Whenever they get deployed to a battlefield, the Imperium classifies it as a win. Thanks for coming, everyone, but the battle's over.
Yeah, I like that. I like how I think it's even a situation where it's like, oh, the Custodes are going there before anything even happens. They already just mark it up as a success. Like, there is no failure for the Custodes.
Over and you just don't know it yet. Even if they somehow lose, it's still called a win, so propaganda has your back, baby. The only in-universe enemy that has a chance in a 1v1 against the Custodes is an Eldar Harlequin, which makes sense because they're more or less the Eldar equivalent of the Custodes. Their god just isn't stuck on a couch. Like I said in the intro, they're also the guys for if you want to be the best of the best. The Custodes have a somewhat varied depiction of war. They have been depicted as being weaker than Space Marines on a few occasions. However, they're usually depicted as being vastly superior, at least in a 1v1, and frequently even as a whole. One Space Marine during the Heresy even wondered if they were so effective at killing Space Marines because it was their intended purpose. Everything about them just oozes quality. The Emperor—
Yeah, what? The only Space Marine that's ever given a Custodes pause is the Minotaur's chapter master, and I can never remember his name. But he could be potentially the last Thunder Warrior, you know? That's the I guess the major theory that's going around, which a video is done about it that I did a reaction to, and I tend to go along with that. That sounds very plausible. Anyway.
Emperor gives them their weapons and armor directly, and may or may not have handcrafted them as well, at least before we stop moving forever. The process to make them is unique to each Custodes and is a massive investment. It's no exaggeration to say that the cost of making a Custodes is measured in planets. You are without a doubt the cream of the Imperium's crop. My favorite quote about them is when the Emperor outright told them he is careful to waste their lives while he'll let others be killed without a second thought. See, he wasn't just a horrible father to the Primarchs, he played favorites with all of his children. And even the Sisters of Silence are incredible by themselves. They keep up with the Custodes.
It is kind of crazy to think of, right? Like, he's more careful with the Custodes than he is with the Primarchs, because obviously he let the Primarchs go out and like do the Great Crusade while the Custodes were still at home. So it does kind of make you wonder, right? That whole the Primarchs were still just another tool kind of thing. I don't know. I keep going back and forth on that whole, you know, did he actually really care about them or not? And I feel like overall it's probably somewhere in between, where like probably did have some kind of feelings for them as a father figure, you know. But at the same time, he's the emperor and he's thinking about things on a galactic scale, so they probably also were just tools to him on some level as well to accomplish a goal.
Despite not having any augments for themselves.
But it's interesting that he was willing to throw the Primarchs out there and let them go and do their thing while he kept the Custodes close to him. Maybe it's just because the Primarchs were that much above the Custodes that he felt like he was comfortable doing that. You know, I don't know. But that is interesting.
Sisters of Silence are incredible by themselves. They keep up with the Custodes despite not having any augments for themselves. Their training is so balls to the wall that they can keep up with demigods just with their workout routine. With the Custodes and Sisters together, you have what's called the Talons of the Emperor. They are outright said in universe to essentially be an invincible fighting machine. The Custodes have no equal in the physical realm. If it exists, they can murder it. The Sisters of Silence job, meanwhile, is to anchor anything magical into the physical realm so the Custodes can kill it. If you want your faction to have a higher purpose, it's hard to beat these guys and girls out in that department. They're supposed to be not only God's bodyguard, not only the best super soldiers the galaxy has ever seen, but the people who are supposed to guide and protect humanity as it matures into a new age. They're a faction of angels. Like, I know that the Space Marines are often called the Emperor's Angels of Death, but that should go to the Custodes, not the Marines. Their tabletop stats are very much reflective of how incredible they're supposed to be. How about we just cut straight to the chase? If you play Custodes, you're winning a fight against pretty much any infantry. Maybe things like Wraith Blades and Cornate Berserkers stand a chance against you in melee, but that's it. Each basic Custodes has a stat block of what would be a character unit in another army. I was comparing the Spirit Seer stats, a Hero Psyker unit, to the basic Custodes model stats, and yeah, sorry my fellow elf lovers, we are not winning that fight. In fact, if you're in a 1v1 situation as the Custodes, just assume you're gonna win. 2+ armor save, 4+ invulnerable save is the standard here. You don't get
I don't know what any of this means, but it sounds impressive.
To be God's bodyguards without being qualified. Bravery is also a non-issue. Their leadership is so high that essentially you're never taking morale casualties. Retreating to fight another day is disgraceful. You're gonna die like a warrior and like it. Of course, you might think that they're mostly a melee army and can't really shoot. Nah, you're wrong. Sure, they're best at melee, but they're still solid at shooting. Their basic guns deal 2 damage. Marines with 2 wounds might think they're oh so special until the Custodes roll up and obliterate them anyways. I'm sorry, did you think your power armor was worth anything? It's not. It's really not. Maybe you think you can overwhelm the Emperor's Chosens with hordes. Not if they brought a Witchseeker squad, you can't. Take that Dawn of War voice line where the Marine screams burn in holy fire and have a woman say it, and you have the Witchseekers as they incinerate entire batches of infantry. Worried about vehicles as a Custodes player? Just throw a Dreadnought at it. They're better than anyone else's. Sorry, Wraith Lord, the Chad Stodes win again. That sentence hurt to type and say, and I want all of you to know that. And of course they have the Grav tanks, because in an age where most of humanity gets to use World War I era mechanized units, the Custodes are cruising around in actual sci-fi tech. I feel like
I was gonna say, right, like, that's a pretty dope looking tank compared to what you normally see. And yeah, I mean, most of the tanks that you see any of the other chapters or, you know, the Imperial Guard or whatever the guardsmen have, they're just basic looking tanks. But this looks like this looks like it's something out of Command and Conquer. Like, this looks like it would be like something that the GDI would have in Tiberian Sun. This is like a Grav mammoth tank. It looks dope. I want it.
It should go without saying, but yes, they're powerful too. They've even got jet bikes for those people who somehow got the mad idea in their head that they could outrun the Emperor's 10,000. Special mention goes to the Rhino. Not for its stats or anything, I just think it's really funny that it's blatantly using an ultramarine paint job. How about the Sisters of Silence? What do they bring to the table? Are you in melee with a Psyker? You get to reroll all your wound rolls. You just do it. They also can't be targeted by or affected by Psyker powers. They look at a man using the power of his mind to throw actual physical lightning around, and they say no. I simply will not be affected by this. I fear the day I go up against the Custodes sister army, because I run Eldar, and I will lose horribly. The models themselves are also absolutely stunning. They're a recent army in the grand scheme of 40k, so it makes sense.
I mean, like, just look at this with the standard, I assume, you know? It's a beautiful model. Looks dope.
The vibrant golden colors of the armor are sure to stand out, and every detail on every model is perfect. There's a reason I said they embody 40k.
That's a Dreadnought, too? I need it. I need it. I need all these things.
At its finest, maybe even more than the Space Marines. They're Baroque, Romanesque super soldiers with lightning spears and supersized guns, and everything I just described looks amazing. The same goes for the Sisters of Silence. They're just a little bit smaller than the Custodes since they're physically just regular people. As for actually collecting them, boy are you in for a treat. They're very easy to paint. Do you have gold paint? Congratulations, that's 90% of your work right there. And because metallic paints are easy to work with, as long as you don't pour it directly onto the miniatures, it'll look good. The rest is some black, red, and gray for the various mechanical bits, and cloth highlights, and bam, you're finished. finish. The pricing of these guys isn't as bad as you might immediately think either. You're getting less models for what you spend, this is true. But because you need less models to fill up a Custodes army, you won't be spending nearly as much money as a Guard, Tyranid, or Orc player. Save your wallet and the Imperium at the same time. That being said, even if it's entirely possible to build a solid Custodes...
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. And these are, like you're saying, these are some of the cheaper ones, right? You know, like $50 on is kind of like the average price for a lot of the stuff. You know, I mean, it's an expensive hobby to get into. That's the unfortunate thing.
Army relatively cheaply. You aren't saving as much money as you potentially could be for reasons I'll get into. But of course, it isn't all fine and dandy, even for these guys. What sets them back from being perfect? Well, for the lore, you might be fighting for a grand cause, but you are fighting from the most uneven footing possible. The Custodes aren't just called the 10,000 because it sounds cool. There's only 10,000 Custodes in the galaxy. And while the Sisters of Silence don't technically have that same number cap, blanks are incredibly rare, so there certainly aren't many of them either. The fact that you're a veritable god of war isn't the Custodes being OP. It's what they need to make any kind of meaningful progress. Every loss is nearly irreplaceable, so while the Orcs can lose 1 billion boys in a single battle and not care, a casualty report of 5 Custodes is devastating. Despite being the top dogs of the Imperium ability-wise, you still get less focus on the Marines in the lore. And yes, every time I cover an Imperium faction, I am going to be bringing this up. The Custodes are always depicted winning, sure, but so are the Marines, and they get the attention more frequently. I still think they're in a solid second place when it comes to how they're treated, but once again, if you play these guys, you aren't getting all the attention. Custodes are also pretty detached from the average person in a multitude of ways. First off,
I mean, you're a demigod, right? Like, you live for thousands of years. I don't even know if have they even like really figured out what the actual like true lifespan of a Custodes is that doesn't die in battle, right? Like, I don't know if that's ever been told. But, you know, there's Custodes that I think that are over 1,000 years old, right? Am I mistaken about that? But I'm pretty sure there are. So it's like, you live on a timescape that is far different from the average human. You are, you know, even physically above and beyond what a Space Marine is, and they are far and away above and beyond what the average human is capable of. So, like, again, the only thing in the Imperium that has any kind of sway over you as far as your capabilities go would be a Primarch or the Emperor himself. Maybe some kind of incredibly powerful Psyker like Malcador was, but there don't seem to like really have, there doesn't seem to be any kind of like Malcador equivalent in the Imperium anymore, right? And like, I feel like the only reason why Malcador was given his station was simply because of how close he was to the Emperor. Anyway.
Their status as the end-all be-all super soldiers means there are very few Custodes stories in a more toned-down environment. Even if it isn't all massive battles, it's pretty much always something dramatic and galaxy-changing if they're involved.
Yeah, I mean, right, it's 2 models for that, but again, it's like, when you're actually playing a game, you're only going to have to, like, maybe field 6 or 7 models or something like that compared to, you know, 15, 20 from maybe another faction. I'm just throwing those numbers out of my ass. I have no idea how, like, the number of models actually is, you know. I know it's based on, like, a point system, essentially, and I guess it depends on, like, the rules of the type of game you're playing. Like, Kill Team's different than the overall, like, major 40k tabletop. So, I mean, like, for some armies, like the Grey Knights and the Custodes, right, like, you don't have to buy as many models in order to actually play the game. So overall, you save money by using those armies. So they're kind of like, you know, beginner armies. You don't have to spend as much to get into it. You don't have to field as many units, so there's not as much for you to have to, you know, micromanage. And they're also easier to paint, so you don't have to spend as much on different paints, kind of stuff. So they're kind of like beginner armies as far as like the tabletop and the hobby goes.
So if you want something low-key, then the Custodes are not for you. Secondly, they're fairly detached from humanity. Some of them are disgusted by the weakness of the average human being, while others do go out of their way to try and protect the average person and acknowledge that they're more than anything fighting for mankind and not just the Emperor.
Right, and that's the thing to me that I always find interesting as one of the things, right? Like, I can understand why Space Marines and Custodes and things like that would be detached from what would be considered normal humanity. but at the same time, the Emperor literally made them to fight for humanity. So it's like, it's kind of weird that you see some of the Space Marine chapters like kind of disrespecting or just outright like not giving a shit about humans at all whatsoever. But then you also have the Salamanders that literally go out of the way and are willing to sacrifice themselves and or lose tactical advantages or even lose battles to go out and save the average person. So I guess it all kind of balances out in the end, right?
But at the end of the day, a custodian doesn't have much to talk to your average person about, you know? It's like, sorry to hear you got laid off from your job, random citizen. That's probably awful. Sorry to interrupt, but please excuse me while I go back to preventing literal demons from eating everyone's souls. They're not exactly the kind of people I can picture myself sharing a few drinks at a bar with. To be honest, though,
can you imagine a custodian just having a regular 9 to 5, you know? Like, I think that would be hilarious.
I'm pretty low on lore problems with them. For the most part, they've been handled very well. There's a few nitpicks I could bring up. The Custodes having been more or less relegated to set dressing for 10,000 years springs to mind, but honestly, I think some of that is more personal preference rather than something I can call an objective flaw. Inasmuch anything I say in these videos is objective. And they even mention how they have to live with the fact they did nothing as the Imperium collapsed all around them, so that sort of thing can even be called an intentional flaw to give them character. But regardless, for once this means I actually have more tabletop negatives than lore negatives. What are they, you might ask? Well, as it turns out, the price of being the ultimate warrior is very literal here. Custodes units cost more points than any army that isn't a knight army, which, yeah, of course the mecha are going to be expensive. This means two things. One, you will almost always be outnumbered. Like, a single Custodes model is worth an entire squad of guardsmen. The only army that won't outnumber you is once again a knight army, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure that matchup favors the knights. The Custodes are tough. They aren't 50-foot tall robot tough. This means that taking objectives is essentially a lost cause because your opponent's going to have far more models to contest it with than you ever will. You're designed to kill with extreme efficiency, and if you can't be doing that, then you're in real danger of losing. The other downside is that whenever you lose a model, it's gonna hurt. Because you have so few troops on the tabletop, every single loss matters. Where the Guard and Tyranids can go through troops like tissue paper, you can't afford to do that. That's why the Custodes can really suffer against Horde armies. While the Sisters of Silence Witch Seekers can burn through them, if you don't have them, you can be in real trouble as 50 different shots come straight at you. Eventually, one of them is going to get lucky, and when they do, the Custodes are going to feel that loss. Armies with damage reduction can also give you some trouble. The Custodes on average deal 2 wounds when they hit, which is great. The problem is, if this number is reduced at all, you're going to be dealing not nearly as much damage as you might think you should be. Let's take the Wraith Guard. They now reduce all incoming damage by 1. They have 3 wounds. This means that a Custodian will need to attack a Wraith Guard 3 times to destroy it. You can very well get stuck in against these units while others tear into you from the sides. You do have a lot of attacks in melee, so it isn't necessarily the biggest problem, but something you should always keep in the back of your mind. Speaking of the Sisters of Silence, to simplify, they're roughly equivalent to Space Marines. It's not a perfect comparison, but from what I've seen, they are closer to them than the Sisters of Battle, which means that while they're tough, they aren't tough enough to be effective bullet sponges with how much you're paying for them. Improper positioning can be the death of them, and then you're left without your anti-magic button that may very well double as your anti-horde button. Also, while you technically can field an All-Sisters army, it's going to be very bare bones and not have a lot of what you need to compete. It's good for fluffy battles, don't get me wrong, and that can be a lot of fun, just not if you're trying to win in a competitive setting. You also don't get any magic if you don't ally with an Imperium force. So if you want to run all Custodes, you not only can't cast magic, but can't deny it without using a stratagem either. With the Sisters of
Yeah, I wonder, I've wondered about that too, just as like a quick little tangent, right? Like, how does it work if you want to mix armies together, right? Like, if you want to take some Custodes units with like some other kind of Space Marine chapter, or maybe some Inquisitor units or something like that. Like, I wonder, like, how does that work? What are the rules for that? Are there rules against that? Are there rules for that? Again, I guess it probably depends on the game type and what the rules are as far as that goes. But, you know, my tabletop experience is extremely limited, mostly to just watching, you know, some stuff on YouTube. So I have no idea how any of that works, but yeah, let me know in the comments, I guess.
Silence being a thing, you might think it's not that big of an issue until you remember that while the Sisters are immune to Eldrad setting their insides to 500 degrees Celsius, the Custodes are not. You're also kinda slow. You have transports, but aside from them and the jet bikes, you aren't the fastest fellas on the field. Not horribly slow, it's not like the Death Guard or the Necrons, but just something to keep in mind before you charge your 10 Custodes into a horde of 100 guardsmen. The models themselves are also pretty samey. The Sisters bring some nice diversity into the mix, but even then they don't really take away from the feel of buff person and golden armor. They also don't have many characters, and the ones they do are buff dude in gold armor, buff dude in gold armor, and buff girl in gold armor. Not exactly a whole lot of variety here. Speaking of, if you can't stand the color gold, just leave. There's nothing for you here. Finally, and most glaring for your wallet, is this. While I didn't mean it when I said you can collect a solid Custodes army for cheaper than other armies, compare the amount of Forge World models available versus the Games Workshop web store models available. You'll notice that it's exactly the same. If you want the full-fledged might of the Talons of the Emperor, you're going to be spending some
Jeez. Look at how much that is for that. That's expensive.
major cash. This isn't just some minor units you'll never care about either. This is things like jump troopers and all your heavy armor. Without managing to find Forge World models on eBay or selling your soul away in exchange for resin, you aren't getting the full army without breaking the bank. Oh yeah, it's Forge World, so resin of course. No one's perfect, I give up. And there we have it, the forces of the Adeptus Custodes and the Sisters of Silence. Nearly invincible in the field of battle, inspiring fear in the hearts of foes and awe in their allies. While you may be outnumbered and outgunned, you'll never, ever be outmatched. If you don't mind having the least amount of models in the field and an obsessive use of the color gold in exchange for the ultimate 1v1 supremacy, then there's no better army for you. Thank you of course to my channel members. The continued support is greatly appreciated in my unending battle against the demons of chaos constantly trying to break through my toilet after someone tried to call me using a phone taped to a bomb. It was a really dumb way to reference Magnus screwing up the Webway project, wasn't it? Thank you truly is what I'm trying to get at. Thank you all for watching and take care out there.
Yeah, let's see what he has for us at the end here.
I'm genuinely surprised to know this, but are you aware that Custodes is actually the correct Latin term for guardian? Like Games Workshop didn't pull an Astra Militarum on us, that's actually how you would say it if you were a Roman. Guess even a broken clock is right twice a day, huh? So
alright, well there we go. That was Do or Don't Adeptus Custodes by Pancreas No Work. Links will be down below in the description as always to the original video without my commentary and reaction and to Pancreas No Work's channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video of his, be sure to go over to his channel and hit the like on this video. And if you haven't hit that sub button on his channel, please be sure to go ahead and do so if you enjoy the man's content. He makes a lot of great content for various universes and yeah, deserves the love and support. Check out his sponsorship stuff, check out his Patreon, check out his channel memberships if you want to take your support for his channel to the next level. And I mean, yeah, the Custodes are kind of, other than the Primarchs, they really are like the end all be all, you know, super soldier of the Imperium. They are one-man armies that, you know, have stood the test of time. And again, like, it is interesting the stuff that he brought up where, you know, the quote from the Emperor where he's, you know, not willing to essentially sacrifice them in combat compared to, or at least he's not as willing to compared to others, does kind of bring up the whole idea of, you know, does he value the Custodes over the Primarchs, or the Custodes kind of like, does he view the Custodes more as like his real children in comparison? Or is it just a situation where like he had so much confidence in the Primarchs with the abilities he put in them, and or is it a situation where because they got scattered as children and they were already out there and he didn't get to raise them the way he wanted to, that the choice was kind of taken from him for what he wanted to do? Inspiring fear in my wallet, dude, for real, for real. It's the big thing that's kind of gate kept me from getting into Warhammer, you know, in general, is just, I know that I would love to play the tabletop game. 100% I know I would. I would absolutely have a blast doing it. And would want to play on regularly. It's just, I just don't have the money to like buy all the things that I want to, and, you know, get these armies going. You know what I'm saying? So it's expensive, but yeah, it is what it is. So, but yeah, I just it makes me wonder again, you know, how much. What is it exactly about the Custodes that he values so much? Is it just the process of how long it takes to create them? And are they more of like literal children to him? You know, I don't know. There's still more I want to just learn about Custodes, and I guess a lot of the process of how the Custodes are created are still kept secret. You know, we don't know. I assume some of it's theorized, and again, I think like in present time there's like less than a handful of people that actually know the process. right? It's such a closely guarded secret. So, I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, if I had a choice of, if I'm in the 40k universe and I had a choice of being someone, if I had a choice to be the Custodes, I probably would take Custodes. Again, right? Like, you might be relegated to just standing in one spot and having guard duty for hundreds of years, but, you know, at least you'll be alive to see those hundreds of years, and, you know, I mean, you're Custodes. There's not much out there in the universe that's gonna harm you. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. But, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video with my commentary and reaction, you know, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow. That's the YouTube algorithm gods. You know you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see some more. If you'd like to join us when I do these reactions live, as I am right now with my YouTube members, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I have to offer. We'd love to have you guys come in and hang out and join our discussions. So if any of that interests you, or if you'd just like to take your sport to the next level, check all that stuff out. But regardless, thank you guys for coming in, hanging out, and watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. If you did, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow. And we'll see you guys in the next one.